Greetings, pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today I've got something very exciting to share with you. We are working on our zone wall mechanics, and today we're going to work on damaging the player when you're outside of the zone. We're going to change the screen, and we're going to affect our UI. So let me show you what happens here. So here we are in the game, and as you can see for the tutorial here today, and you can keep it if you like, at the bottom of the screen, just above our health, we have an actual number that shows what your health is currently at. So currently we're at 100% health, and that's because of a little bit of scripting we'll get to in a moment. But if I go outside of the zone, a couple things happen. First of all, the screen gets all different and crazy, and we're in the storm, or we're in this electrical something going on, and you'll notice my health is now ticking down, 98, 97. It's ticking down. We're getting damaged because we're outside of the zone. And if I run back into the zone, okay, we're safe again. And for the tutorial today, our health automatically returns to 100% once we're back inside the zone. So today what we're going to be doing is figuring out how to affect that UI, how to change our screen, how to make sure that we're in and outside of the zone, and then dealing with some player health stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and stop this, and we're going to be creating two scripts. So what I have here for you today, let me show you really briefly. So here on the screen you'll see that we have our scene, and then we're going to have to do two things. First, we need to know when we are outside of the zone. Then we then need to know when we are inside of the zone. And we then need to get a handle to our slider, and the slider is the health thing at the bottom here. And then we're going to write two scripts. So here's the two scripts. We have the player health manager, and we have the zone damage. And as you can see, we need to get a handle to a couple of things. So for player health, we're really going to get a handle to all of our different health parameters, like what's your maximum health, what's your minimum, what's the starting health at, what's your current health at. We need to get a handle to the slider because we're going to change that visually on the screen for you when you get damaged. And then we're going to create this function called change health. More about that in a little bit. Now, on the other side, we have zone damage. And for this, we need to get access to the player because we need to know when they're in and outside of the zone. We're going to handle the post-processing behaviors. We'll talk more about that. We need some zone parameters. How much damage should we cause? How often should we cause it? And then we're going to get a handle to the player health manager so that these two can talk to each other. All right? Okay, so here we are, and we're going to go and talk about those scripts. So let's go ahead and bring up MonoDevelop, and I'll show you the two scripts. So I'm going to show them to you, and I'll show you how to make these. So if you're not familiar, to make a new script, all you have to do is in your project here, you're going to right-click and say Create C# script, okay? And then it'll show up, and you can give it a name, and you double-click it to open it, and then just follow along here. Now, I will provide both of these scripts for you in the download, as always, but I want to make sure that you know that you can follow along here. I'm going to talk about how it works, and you can actually see the code on the screen here. So you could redo it yourself, but you can also just look at the script and kind of understand. But we're going to talk about how it works first. So let's talk about the zone damage first, because this does a lot more, and then we're going to talk about the player health in a moment. So first of all, the zone damage script is on the zone wall object. So we go to our scene, and let's focus in on that. So this is the actual zone wall. This is the thing that shrinks and moves around the world. And this is the model. Now, very important, it does have a capsule collider. And that capsule collider is set to is trigger. So this is a trigger zone. So let's think of it like a laser tripwire. When you walk over that, it's going to do something. And when you walk over it the other way, it's going to do something too. Now, because there is no cylindrical colliders inside of Unity, there's only these capsules. You do run into a problem that if you don't make it large enough, you see how this curve here, if you think of this curve upside down, like down here, let's take a look. I'm going to show you a problem and how to solve it. So if you put this collider right on the floor where the bottom of the floor is right here, there's going to be this whole area in here that, depending on the size of you versus the size of this collider, where you could actually leave that trigger when you don't mean to. So what you need to do is for something like this where your volume is actually a cylinder, make sure that your capsule collider is plenty tall enough that when you enter and exit at any point here, you're actually entering and exiting from a solid side, not this curved part, all right? Because otherwise it's not going to work out for you. Okay, so this script, here we are, BRS zone damage, is going to be on the zone wall itself, on this whole parent object here that is the model and everything. Underneath of it is our interior. We don't have to worry about that. We're just dealing with this guy here, okay? So your script will go on there. So once you create the script, you just drag and drop it over here, and it will appear here. You won't see any of this at first if you've created a brand new script, because we're going to code that now together. All right, so here we are. So first of all, at the very top, we do need to add this line that says using Unity Engine .post-processing, because we're going to be dealing with the post-processing of the screen. And this means that it's post, so once the screen is processed and it's ready to render it to the screen, the next frame. You talk about games that are 60 FPS or 100 or more FPS, so that's 60 or 100 times per second that it's generating the screen and then it's pumping it out to your monitor. So after we've done that, but before it gets to the screen and to the viewer's eye, we're going to do some post-processing. We're going to actually make some changes to it after it's done, but before the player sees it. All right? So these sections here are all of our parameters, and I'm going to go over them, but you'll notice these headers. All this header is to make these nice, bold definitions here for you. So I picked that up from a user, and I think it's awesome. I think we're going to be doing that so that it's more clear over here as to what are the different things here. So for our player object, we need a handle to our player, public game object player, and we need a private string that is the player name, because we're going to make sure with a collision that it's only the player that can trigger this damaging of the player when you go in and outside of the zone. It's not fair for some object to go outside the zone and the player get damaged for it, right? Then we have our post-processing object. So we're going to need a profile, and that's what we'll create in a little bit. I'll show you. A profile that is for when we're outside the zone, and a standard profile, and then a handle to our camera's post-processing behavior. So cam PPB here, okay? We'll talk more about that in a bit. The zone damage parameters. This is, if you play PUBG or Fortnite or anything, this is how often do I want to damage the player when they're outside the zone, and how much damage do I want to give them. So here's a note that in future values, as we work on this further, we are going to get down to the point where it's how far you are from the zone, you'll get more damaged, and each successive zone will have a zone damage multiplier. So first circle, you only get damage, say 1. Second circle, you'll get damage 3, that kind of thing. So that will be coming in the future. Or if you're code savvy, go ahead and fill this in and share it with the community, and we'll all be the wiser, all right? But we'll get to that eventually, don't you worry. So for now, we're just going to say every 3 seconds, our tick rate, we're going to get damaged 1 damage point that we're outside the circle, okay? Then here, we're getting a handle to the player health manager. So the other script that we're going to write, this is how we handle that. So we're going to get a public game object that's called BRS Mechanics, and then we're going to instantiate. We're going to make a new kind of copy or a new thing of the BRS health player manager that is on that, player health manager. And we're going to call that PHM for short, all right? Then we have a Boolean saying, are we in the zone or not? In zone. And we're going to use that to kind of trigger things back and forth. And then here, this is for demo purposes only. We have a Boolean here that we always set to true that says, if we're inside the zone, we go to full health. So for your game, if you don't want that, which you probably don't, then all you have to do is just double / here and comment that out, okay? So let's get to it. So in the start, what we're doing here is we're saying, let's get a handle to the player. Then we're going to go and find the first person character, and that is the object that has a camera on it underneath the FPS controller. So you see here, FPS controller, first person character. If I zoom in on that, this is this guy who has a camera, right? And then down here, he has this post-processing behavior. So we did this in the first episode, but in case you haven't done it, you do need to download from the asset store and install the post-processing. It's free from Unity. And then just add a post-processing behavior here. Once you have it installed, you should see it in the standard assets, I believe. Let's see, standard assets, or is it post-processing? Post-processing, here it is. So you should see this post-processing and all these things in here. And once you see that, then over here, you can just say add component, and you can even search for it. So post-process, there you go. And you'll see post-processing behavior. When you add that, it'll ask you for a profile, okay? Now the profile we're going to create together in a little bit. We'll get back to that once we have finished all the scripting, but I just wanted to let you know that that's where that is, okay? So we are accessing that value which is on this object, which is the thing that has the camera. And that's the important part there. So we're going to say, find me the first person character, find me his post-processing behavior, get a reference to that. Kind of like having somebody's phone number. Now you can call that person. That's a reference to that person. And we're going to store that in cam PPB for post-processing behavior. And then we're going to say the player name is equal to the player.transform.name. So we know the name of the object that is the player. So then here, we're getting a handle to the other script again, and this is the PHM equals brsmechanics.getComponent player health manager. So what that means is up here, we're going to connect that via drag and drop. So once we have a connection to that object, then I can say, okay, now go into that object, go into get its component that is this script, because we're going to need to call a function on that script. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Don't worry, we're getting there. Now here's a little tricky part if you're newer to scripting, so I'll step you through it. Invoke repeating means I want to call this function over and over again, and I just want it to run forever. Think of it like a perpetual clock, right? So what am I going to call my function? I'm going to call my function damage the player. And then this first parameter says, from the beginning of the game, how long do you want me to wait until I start doing this? And I want you to wait 0 amount. I want you to start immediately. And then how often do you want me to call this thing? So this is when does it start, and this is how often does it go. So if this was a clock per se, we would have put in here 1 second. Every second we want it to tick, 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 right? And this is controlled up here. We can say the tick rate. So I have it set to 3 seconds. So every 3 seconds right now. And again, these will be variabilized later once you have different zone circles and more damage and all that kind of stuff. So all this is going to do is say, from the very beginning of time, call this function right away every 3 seconds. So it will not call it immediately, but it will call it first at 3 seconds, then 6, then 9, etc. It'll keep going. Okay? So that's going to call forever, and we'll get down to that down here. So now here's the real meat and potatoes of it. We're going to say, since this script is going on the zone wall and it has a trigger, right? We're going to say it's kind of an inverse logic. You're safe when you're inside it. So the first thing we do is say, when you exit the trigger, on trigger exit, get a handle to the thing that collided with me. So that's the player that tripped the tripwire. But we need to make sure it's the player. So we're going to say if, we're going to store this as col, which is a common way to say collider. If the collider.transform, so its object thing, .name is equal to what we have stored as the player name, then we know it's definitely the player that triggered us. Okay, then that means we're now outside of the zone. So we need to do 2 things. We need to go to our post-processing behavior, to the profile, which again we'll talk about in a second, and we're going to change it to the outside zone. So that's when it gets all dark and nasty and stormy. And I'm going to say in zone is now false. It is false that you are in the zone. So we are outside of the zone. Okay? Now, when you enter the trigger, meaning we're outside and we come back in, again, let's get a handle to the collider. Again, if the collider is the player, then we're going to change our profile back to the standard one so that it looks normal, right? And I'm going to say it's true that we are in the zone. Okay, that's really the core of it. Now, because of this happening, you see how we're flipping this variable back and forth, true and false of in zone. That means that because up here, our invoke repeating right here of damaged player is going constantly, it's down here, and it's just going to say, if you're not in the zone, I need to do stuff. So all that means is it's trying to damage you always. But if you're in the zone, it can't get into this function here because in zone is true, and this is looking for if in zone is false. Cool, right? So that means that it'll keep trying to damage you, and it just won't be able to. But if you're outside of the zone, this exclamation point in front of the in zone means the opposite of it. So that means if it is false in zone, so if you are outside of the zone, then we're going to damage the player by the tick damage amount. And how we're going to do that is we're actually going to call this function on the other script. We'll talk about that in a second. And I'm going to pass it in a negative tick damage. That means that all you have to do as the player or as the game designer is in the tick damage integer, you just tell me a solid number, how much damage you want to affect the player. 5, 10, 1,000, whatever. And then I will pass in a negative amount to my change health. We'll talk about that in a minute. That's very important. Now, the other thing I added right here, this is just for the demo purposes here. This debug health, this is the thing I talked about up here that you can get rid of this. This is just for demo purposes. This just means that if debug health is true, then we're just going to call that same function and send it 100. So we reset our value to 100% if we're inside the zone. That way we can make these changes and we can test and make sure it works, and we can just reset it. So in the end, I would also get rid of this. Get rid of lines 81 through 84. Just cut them out and save, and then get rid of this up here, the debug value 37 and 38, or 36, 37, 38. Get rid of all that, and then you'll be right as rain the way that it works in game. Okay, so with all that done, zone damage script, We're going to put that on our zone wall. And here's everything in here. So we need to give it a couple of things. For one, we need to tell it how often we want it to tick. So 3 is fine. I'm going to change this to 5 just so we can see it happen a little faster. And it's looking for 2 post-processing volumes, okay? So let me go to the game view and we'll talk about post-processing volumes. So if we go here to the first-person character, remember we added this post-processing behavior, but it's looking for a profile. And that profile is basically just a bunch of settings you're going to give it. So if I go into our folder here, you'll notice I got a bunch of these things that look like this, where it's got the Unity logo inside this. So I've got BRS profile, outside zone. Oh, that sounds interesting. So let's talk about BRS first. So this is everything that we're seeing when we play the game, and these are all the special effects. So for example, I have anti-aliasing turned on. I turned on ambient occlusion. You can see the ground there getting affected. And you can change some of these, and I'll show you what I have it set to so you can follow along. So to create one of these, first of all, you're going to need to right-click and say Create. And once you have everything installed, you should see this here, a post-processing profile. I don't know why I have 2 of them here. You should only have 1. Post-processing profile. And it will create this object here. So then before you start changing everything, go to your camera, go to the object with your camera with the post-processing behavior, and just click and drag and add it onto there. So if you just do this, click and drag and drop it there. Now, it's a little confusing, but now if you click on this, you get all these options and you'll actually be able to see the changes here. If you're looking at your game view, you'll be able to see it. So now, see when I uncheck and check ambient occlusion, you see it occur. All right, so top to bottom, here's the settings I have. Anti-aliasing, I have this set to fast approximate anti-aliasing. You can change this to temporal anti-aliasing. It does not work with MSAA, so I don't know if that's important to you or not, but I have been told that for fast moving things that this works a little bit better. For me, I just have it set to fast right now because I'm just testing things. And then I have it set to performance for video recording, but usually I put it to quality or extreme quality. Ambient occlusion, I just have it set to 1, radius of 3, sample count medium, downsampling. No big deal. You can put things like screen space reflection. Doesn't really make sense for this because there's not a whole lot of metal. There's not a whole lot of things that are reflective. We have a lot of dielectric materials like grass and dirt and things, so there's not really a sense to that. Depth of field. This I still have not mastered, so I'm not going to play with it yet, but there are options here. You can tell it to use the camera, and I think that should work better, but I haven't messed with it yet. When we get more buildings and things where we can see more depth, I think that'll be more important. Motion blur. Personally, I'm one of those people, I hate it, so I turn it off. Eye adaptation. This makes my current scene look terrible, but if you do it right, there are ways to get this so that when you go from a dark scene like a cave and you walk outside, you see the light, and it's like how your eyes adjust. So that's something you can do there. Bloom, I have adjusted just so that we have some glow here. So I have it as 0.125, not very much. Threshold of 1, soft knee of 1, radius of 2.9, anti-flicker is on. And if you turn that on and off, you'll see how the wall changes there. So just a little bit of glow to things, no big deal. Color grading, I always choose the filmic. It's like film. It's like, movies. So I just turned that on, and I have not changed any of the other settings there. And I think that's chromatic aberration. I did turn that on with a 0.125. And this is, again, a little bit of this screen, the way it kind of blurs and works around the edges as you move quickly. And it changes some of the colors. Chromo right there. Vignette. I do have a little bit of a vignette around the corner, so I have it set to classic. I did not change the center value at all. Intensity, 0.25. Smoothness, 0.25. Roundness of 1. And that's it. Okay, so that's for the normal one, right? So that's what you're going to create and attach to your camera. Now, what you can also do is, even though we're inside the zone technically right now, I'm going to put on the outside zone one and just show you all the changes I made to that one. So for this one, I increased the ambient occlusion. I don't think it really matters, but I upped it to 3.74. And then what other changes did I make? Bloom. I increased the bloom quite a bit to 1. Because remember, we were at like 0.125 before. So that's 1, 1.1, 1, 3.5. Filmic, here we go. So I changed a lot of the color stuff here. So just kind of run them down for you. Under basic, I've got 0.2, negative 49, 58, 0, 0.78, 1.22. Just kind of messing with all that. And then channel mixer is set to 100. So just kind of mess with that. And then here, I did make a point here. I think if you double click, you can create a little point here. And then I moved it around to about here. And then just kind of play with this. And you can see it makes some changes to the colors and the hue. I kind of like that, how it kind of glows a bit more, making it look kind of otherworldly and weird that you're inside this weird zone, right? And then down here for the vignette, I increased it just a little bit to 0.26, just kind of caved in a little bit, and I did click rounded to make that more rounded. So this is what it looks like when you're outside the zone. So we're going to save that, call that outside zone. Now for now, I'm going to go back to my camera and put back our normal one, because that's the one we need to start with. Okay, so with all that set, let's go to zone wall again, and on the script here, you can just drag and drop these things in here. So the outside zone, put your outside one. The standard one that you're using now, put it there because it's going to flip back and forth. And then here, we need to get a handle to our BRS mechanics. Even though we haven't put the script on it yet, let's go ahead and get a handle to that. So all you're going to do is click and drag this BRS mechanics object and drop it in there, okay? Because that's going to get a handle to this, and then we're going to look for a script that's on it that we're going to create now. So this script is all set. This player will get filled in by the script, and the rest of this is, PHM will get filled in by the script, and the rest of this is values that we set. Okay, so let's go to our BRS mechanics. Now, if we go to the scene view, let me just zoom out a bit. So as you know from previous videos, what we're doing here is we have a couple of, this was just a container object to kind of organize the rest of this stuff. Here's the plane drop stuff, here's our safe zone, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, since this is the core mechanic for any kind of stuff, any kind of mechanics, any kind of like logic we need for this, then I decided this is the perfect place to put the BRS Player Health Manager. So this thing will manage all the stuff about the player's health. It'll manage the numerics behind how much health you have, how much you can go to in total. It will eventually manage whether or not the player is alive. So when you get killed, you know, it'll trigger that. But it will also get a handle to the health slider. And for the tutorial, we have the numbers here. So let's talk about this script. So again, to create a new script, right click, create, C#, and we're going to call this one BRS Player Health Manager. So that's capital P, capital H, capital M, everything else all strung together, and create that guy. Now, at the top of this guy, we do need to add here the using unityengine.ui. So we'll add that because we're going to access some of the UI objects. So now, this is not very big. There's only 44 lines of code, and that's including my little promotional thing here. So, no big deal. So to start with, let's run it down. I'm going to click on this and click on this so we can see the two together. So the player health parameters, we have a couple of things. We have your starting health, which can be different from your maximum health. For example, PUBG, I think you start with 75% health, and you know your maximum you can go to is 100. So you can make that change. I have mine set to 80 and 100. Then your minimum health is 0. Anything below 0 and you're dead, right? Or actually 0 would be you're dead, so we're going to change it to probably 1. And then here we're going to do, in a future episode, when we talk more about the player statistics and when we get some third-person animations and stuff, we can do the actual is dead or alive, and we can make the camera swoop back when you die, all that kind of stuff. So this will be coming forth hence. So right now it does nothing at the moment. The health UI slider, so that's going to be under our UI, under the canvas, under player health slider, okay? And that is this thing on the screen here that you see. All right, I'll show you how that works in just a second. But we're going to get a handle to that, and then we're going to get a private handle to the actual slider component of it. We'll talk about that right down here. Then we need, for the tutorial only, just for this, I've added this section that is the health amount, and we're getting the text, and that's so you can visually see it on the screen, because it might be a little hard on the video to see that thing is actually coming down. That's why I increased it to 5 as well. Okay, so this is very simple. So in the beginning, we're just going to get a handle to our health slider. So again, we're going to connect this by drag and drop. So when the script is here, and when you're all done writing it, you'll see that some of these are blank. And you're going to go in here and find the slider, the health slider, which is this object. And you can see here it is, and it's set to 100. And if I drag this, you'll see it interactively work. You'll see our health is going down, right? And this is just a visual thing, and we have a background behind it. So there we go. Now to create a slider, if I haven't mentioned that yet, under your canvas, you're just going to right click and say UI slider, okay? and that will create a slider here. And you have to do a little bit of messing about with it if you want to make it a certain size and placement. I have center to the world. I have it set left 50, right 50, height 52. And then it's not interactable. There are no transitions, no navigation. The fill rect is just standard to put it in there for me. Fill, direction left to right. So it fills 0 to 100. I put the minimum value of 0, the maximum value of 100. Whole numbers only, and then the value is at 100. And this gets set by script as well. Then behind it, I put a background, which is just an image. It's just a white color. I didn't even bother with a sprite. And I turn down the opacity here. So I just put that behind it, and I set it up in the exact same spot, and now it fills all the way in. So that's just an image behind it. You can fill that in with whatever you want. This fill area actually gets created by the slider, and the fill gets created by the slider as well. I did try to put this mask on it. I don't really think it worked, so I don't think you'll need that. But as always, if you have trouble, let me know. So this will go back and forth, and we'll fill that up. Okay, cool. So with that in set, let's go ahead and go to the mechanics. So you're just going to drag and drop this guy right here, health slider. Then also the text here for, again, just for the tutorial, is called health amount. So this is just a text. So again, right click on canvas, UI text. That's all it is. I called it health amount. I put its pivot to the bottom center, and we're going to say, so clicking here, clicking there, all right? We're going to say 0, 70, 0 in the position, 200 by 64. Just going to make it real big because I put the text at 100 just for now, and then Arial bold size of 32. And then I put the center, I don't know what you call it, alignment. There you go. It's like, what's the word for that? Alignment. Center alignment and center alignment here, so just so it's right in the center of wherever I put this object. And then set to wrap and truncate, those are standard. So there you go. That's just the text for there. But for our BRS mechanics here, let's go ahead and we can drag that over here and connect that to here. So now that we have those connections in code, we can call it. So in code here, what we're going to do is in the start, right when we begin the world, we're going to say health slider, the thing that you put in here is equal to health slider.get component slider. So this underscore health slider is the actual slider. The health slider here is the game object, okay? So this is a component of this game object, and we're just calling it the underscore health slider. So we know that it's part of it and it's related, but it's not the exact same thing. So this is the actual slider, the actual thing I dragged back and forth. So with that set, I'm going to say, hey, go ahead and set your maximum value to whatever the player has said is the max health. Set your minimum value to whatever the player has said is the minimum health. And set your value equal to the starting health. So for me, that's 80. But again, because of our, for the tutorial only thing in the other script, anytime we're inside the zone, you'll see it'll jump all the way up to 100. So you'll see that in a moment. So then for the tutorial here again, our text, so this text thing that we dragged over, it says go ahead and get a handle to the actual text of that game object that is called a text object. And in here, what we're going to do is this is the change health script. So the reason why it's not subtract health or damage player or anything like that is because we want to use this for both when you get damaged and when you use like a healing item. So we're going to make a change to your health, and this change can be positive or negative. So that's why we just take in a negative value from the other script. And I'll show that again in a moment. So all we're going to do here is when this gets called, we're going to bring in some kind of an amount that we're going to change by. We're going to say, hey, the value of the slider plus equals that change amount. So if it's 100, but we get damaged by 10, 100 plus a negative 10 is 90. Okay, so that'll still work out. And then just for the tutorial here, I have it marked remove after tutorial. So you can remove lines 41 and 42 here. This just updates the text on the screen to be that same value so you can visually see it a little bit better. So right now the player health script is very, very simple. So let's go back to the zone damage and just recap so that we understand how this works. So here, when we are damaging ourselves, right, we're trying to damage the player all the time. And only when we are outside of the zone will this variable be false, which will allow us to fall into here. And then we're going to send a negative tick damage, again, because it's a change health, so we're doing a negative change. So the way this works is you see this underscore PHM up here. That's what we did here is we said set this equal to the thing that we've connected to when we dragged and dropped for the BRS mechanics. Get a component of that object. What component? The BRS Player Health Manager script. Okay, so now this is really equal to this script by doing that. So now we can say, okay, on this script, call this function change health, which is right here. So we're just saying, hey, change health, negative tick damage, please. And it goes up through the air, comes back down and says, okay, cool. So we're going to get that negative amount right here, and that's what we're going to put here. So that's why we add a negative value. And that's it. The two just talk to each other and we're all set. So again, let's take a look. So we've got our first person character. We've got the post-processing behavior here, and it's taken in a profile, which is our standard profile. Very nice. Then we have our health slider, and that we can control. Very nice. Then we have BRS mechanics, which we have now applied the new player health, and we've set this to say 80 is our start. Again, for the tutorial, it'll jump up to 100. Max 100 and 0 for the minimum, which it should really be 1. And then we have access to our slider. We have access to the health text. Very cool. And the zone wall says, hey, I need access to the player. I need the two profiles you want me to switch back and forth from. I need to know how much damage you want me to do and how often to do it. And then I need a handle to the player health so I can tell the player health, yo, damage the player because they're outside of the zone. So again, let's take a look. Now that we've done it all, we'll just kind of recap. So again, I'm at 100% health because I'm inside the zone. And if I go outside, now look at this. I'm getting damaged 5 every tick because I told it every 3 seconds, damage me 5%. Going all the way down. Oh, and it's chunking. It's chunking. And then I go back inside, and the very first time it kicks back over that 3-second mark, I'm all the way back up to 100%. Now, here's one thing we can do. Let's go into the script. And again, under zone damage, we already set this up. So this Boolean up here is true. So let's set this to false and watch what happens. So I'm going to build everything. Yep, do your thing. Very cool. And give it a second. You'll see this icon on the bottom corner. That means that Unity is processing the new changes that were made. Now I should not go back up to 100% health, and I should not even start at 100% health. I should now start at 80% health. Let's go ahead and hit start. And right away I'm at 80. Now, we don't have a thing right away to tell the numbers to update to that. But if I go outside the zone and we start chunking, it should correct itself, I hope. Yeah, 75, 70, and now I go back inside and nothing changes. So this is much better to the way that like PUBG and Fortnite works. So I'm damaged, and then when I come back inside, I stop taking damage, but I don't heal either. You know, I now need to find like a health kit and get healed up. And if I go back outside the zone, I'm going to get damaged every 3 seconds by a certain amount. And it just kind of chunks you down. So there you go. So that's it, guys. I hope you have enjoyed very much. As always, I will provide both of these scripts onto the website, and you can download them from the description in the video. So check the link below. And I followed all the steps here and showed you how we set it all up. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. It's very helpful if you can take pictures for me of like how you have the inspector set up, the layout of your hierarchy here. If you try to match it as close as you can to the way I've done it here, I promise you it works. I do have some errors here, but don't worry. This is because I have the plain drop core disabled. It's having trouble finding the UI manager, so don't worry about that. There are no errors in the script, so if you followed along and you've connected everything, it should work beautifully. If you have trouble, I'm very willing to help, but please work with me and make sure that you send me pictures of everything, and make sure you say, here's what I have these values set to. That really helps in narrowing it down because we can't see the screen with you. We can't, live video chat, whatever, all the time. So make sure that you guys send me those pictures, and I'll be very happy to help you work through it. So until next time, guys, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.